Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with director Roger Ross Williams and author Ron Suskind from the film Life Animated, recorded at the Landmark.
Roger, before you got involved as a director, Ron, what point during Owen's evolution, so to speak, did you decide to write this book? And how long did it take?
Yeah, so when Owen turns about red, wow, those are terrific sound effects. Who is that person? Can you go on the road with us? I
mean, it a beer?
We have a show in Des Moines and Cleveland. So around the time Owen turns around 19 or so, he starts to grow in awareness, I think is the best way to put it. He starts to kind of see what the world sees of him. And because a couple of things happened where actually he met some people from Disney around that time. And they kind of affirmed him. They're like, hey, you were a person of real worth here. And one of them is actually here we're going to talk to in a minute, who's a big Disney big shot here. Well, I'll introduce him right now. We have a guy over here named Don Hahn, who's one of the great producers, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. This guy is a great guy, and Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, right.
Go on, Don Hahn, the great Don Hahn.
Amazing. Woo! Yeah.
And we're going to talk to Don in a second because he and Owen have like a relationship, which is amazing. And so around the time he meets Don Hahn and a few other people, he starts to sort of say, hey, I'm a person of quality and of worth and of value, and people don't see me for who I am, basically. Right. I'm more than I appear. And he kind of turned to me and Cornelia. Cornelia was a writer before Owen's autism, journalists like me, and he's kind of like, you're a writer and Mom's a writer, and we're like, yeah, got it. And we were up late a few nights thinking about, could we do a book? And what would that be like? It'd be a big jump for us. I've been very public in my life with my work, but the family was private, and that was right. That felt right. But Cornelia basically hit it right in the head, as she always does. She said, look, would a book that we could write, would a book like that have helped us 15 years ago when we were in hell, basically? And of course, the answer was yes. So we go off to do the book. 2012 we start. It's finished in 2014. Book kind of hits. And then right before the book was finished, Roger had just finished an amazing movie called God Loves Uganda. And he and I have known each other for years. And off we went. So.
Thank you. God Loves Uganda fans.
It's great. It's a great movie.
Yeah. Well, Ron and I have known each other for 15 years, and we worked as journalists at ABC together.
Wow.
And I've done we did a show called Life 360,
Life 360
for PBS, and I did a piece about how Cornelia's parents met.
Yeah.
And then Ron asked me to work on Owen's bar mitzvah video.
Right. Yeah. Roger's an honorary Jew now, so just so you know. It's a nice program. He gets free dental with that.
So because of this relationship that you already had, did that make it easier for the both of you to collaborate on this extraordinary story for a feature?
Well, look, we have no privacy zone, either of us, as we had it surgically removed. But Cornelia has one.
Yes.
And if it wasn't Roger, there would be no movie. Because Corn trusted Roger. He was already a person that she knew deeply and well. And so when Roger said, what do you think, Cornelia? She's like, okay.
Well, let me ask you, Roger, what did you initially learn or know about autism before you really delved into this project as a documentary? And what did you learn about autism and specifically about Owen along the way? Because if you've known Ron for all those years, you've known Owen.
I didn't know Owen that well, and I didn't really know much about autism. Okay. And I didn't know really anyone living with autism. So it was a learning curve for me, and I think you kind of experienced that in the film. Because in the beginning you meet Owen and he's talking and pacing, and you may be a little uncomfortable and not know what's going on. But by the end of the film, you know exactly what's going on. You're immersed in Owen's world, and that was really my idea for the film, is that to bring the viewer into Owen's reality, to tell the story from the inside looking out.
Right.
You know, most films about people who have challenges or disabilities are always from the outside looking in. You know, it's never from their perspective, and that was really my goal. And as I sort of got to know Owen and got to know this rich, incredible world and how brilliant he is, I realized that people with autism each of them have something special gift and something to offer us.
Well, because for me growing up, well, even as a grown-up, because I didn't know anyone with autism and I didn't have any friends who knew people with autism, my first experience with autism was from the movie Rain Man.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
that was sort of like a breakthrough film to introduce people to autism who were not already familiar with it. But that was one specific form of autism. I mean, what Owen, you know, I didn't realize until watching this film that it was a degenerative condition, because when he was up until 3 years old, he was fine.
Yeah, right. And it's about a third of the cases are called regressive autism. But it's interesting what you say about Rain Man, because a lot of people are saying now, Rain Man's 1988, that this is kind of the next movie, and especially we're in theaters and it's getting a terrific embrace, that will kind of be maybe a counter or at least an addition to what most people know, which is Rain Man. And they're meeting someone very different here that's very representative of autism as well.
Well, at what point, Roger and Ron, did you take Owen aside and say, all right, Owen, we are going to make a movie about this?
Yeah.
How did he react to that? Was he like all for it? Was he nervous?
Yeah.
But did you honestly have any pause, so to speak, about putting him on camera?
Yeah, sure. You know, and Cornelia had more than I did, I think. You know, we just said, okay, this is going to a next level here. And we talked to Owen and said, okay, you know movies. And he's like, I do. I said, this is going to be a movie now. And what do you think? Would you want to do that? And, you know, he's like, well, more people will know me for who I am. I said, right. And of course, he says that I am really an unpolished gem, a diamond in the rough. That's Aladdin, of course. And we're like, that's true. A lot more people. He's like, I'm in. And what's interesting, as soon as Roger got him on camera, though, we realized something crazy was happening. I mean, Roger, what did it look like through your eyes? Remember when we did that first filming at Riverview when he was doing Mufasa and Simba were doing it on the bed?
Well, Owen lives in the moment, so he's living in sort of the land of the lost sidekicks. So he completely ignores the camera, which is really so for me was like a dream for a documentary subject. And so the night, that night he spends the first night in his apartment and he's there all alone. Tom Bergman, our cinematographer, who is just really great and really became part of the family. I leave Tom and Owen. So Tom is in the corner. Owen is paying no attention to Tom. Owen goes to sleep with Tom there filming. Tom sneaks back in at 6 in, is there filming when Owen opens his eyes for the first time, and Owen never looks at the camera. And he's just like a dream subject.
And he occurs in present tense, which he happens on the screen, which is wonderful.
But he's the perfect subject for a film because he's been inspired so much by these movies. Yeah. I mean, what was it about the Disney films versus, let's say, Looney Tunes or anything else, maybe even like Harry Potter or Star Wars?
For this, let's go to Don Hahn over here. What is it, Don?
Come on up, Don. Please join the party.
Come on, Don. Come on, buddy.
This is great.
This is a great treat having Don here.
This is great.
So now, Don, so 2010 is when you meet Owen for the first time. And some people at Disney recognize what was up with Owen. Next thing you know, Don has got an audience ready here at Burbank. Owen is just, when he goes to the Burbank lot, he's like, he's in heaven. He's just like, and he meets Don the first time. And remember, we went to the office, and of course, he knows every credit everything Don's ever done since high school, basically.
And every line dialogue in every film I've ever made, yeah.
Yeah. So after a minute, he's outrunning Don. Don's like, wait a second, who played that again? And he was asking him stuff about Hunchback, remember?
Yeah, he was, it's really spooky. This whole film and experience is quite spooky, actually. Owen came to the office, and I thought, oh, it's nice, and Wendy, your publisher, called and said, oh, this guy named Ron Suskind, he's written some things about the Bush administration. And I thought, okay, fine. And so it was one of those meetings where I thought, fine. And Owen comes in and sits on my couch and begins, in the most charming way, reciting all these sidekick lines. And from Hunchback of Notre Dame, he said, well, you know, some of the gargoyles, there's this one gargoyle who you used the voice of Mary Wicks, but then sadly Mary Wicks died. And when Mary Wicks died, you brought in, you know, somebody else, and your lines weren't just quite the same as Mary Wicks. And you know Mary Wicks really was a friend of Walt Disney, and Mary Wicks really enjoyed the whole idea of It's a Small World came from Mary Wicks, who did the voice. And like this amazing encyclopedic knowledge. And when you work on a movie and leave it for a few years, you leave it. Owen was shockingly authentic and charming and disarming is the only way I can put it in that first meeting.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. So after Owen did this like walking IMDb thing, which he does, Don's sort of like, okay, so tell me something that you love about Hunchback. Now, you ask someone that, they'll say, oh, I love the way this character did this, or I love the way, you know, someone's sort of did something in the plot. Owen's like, well, there's a lot in it. Like one thing I use is a particular line by Mary Wicks, who plays Laverne the Gargoyle. And I can see Don sort of going through a process of, what's he going to say? And he says, well, something I say to myself when I'm hesitating or I'm not sure of myself is what Mary Wicks, as Laverne says to Quasimodo, where she says, yeah, Quasi, listen, life's not a spectator sport. If watching is all you're going to do, you're going to watch your life go by without you. And Owen says, I hear this in my head when I'm not sure if I can go forward. And it helps me. And I see Don's eyes start to well up. And a relationship starts really at that moment. And so a couple weeks later, Owen tells Don for the first time about the Land of the Lost Sidekicks, that whole idea. 12 sidekicks searching for a hero. And Don's the first one to hear about it. So about a month passes, Don calls us, we're back in Washington, and he's like, Ron, can Owen tell us more about that plot, the Land of the Lost Sidekicks? I'm like, Jesus, you know, Disney's on the telephone. So I go to Owen in the kitchen. Owen, okay, Don, I'll call you right back. I said, Owen, Don Hahn, right, he's on the phone about the Land of the Lost Sidekicks. And I was like, huh? I said, can you tell me more about the plot, you know, what's going on in the forest? I was like, yeah, you know, I'm working on it. I said, Disney's on the phone. This is your moment. And so I'm in the kitchen, you know, just having a massive agita attack here. And I'm like, hey, buddy, you know, like, I'm kind of good with stories. You know, maybe we can talk. I'll be kind of like your story consultant. Can we kind of, you know? He's like, no, Dad, yeah, you're kind of the story guy. That's it, yeah. But I'm good. So I called Don back, and I'm like, Don, I'm sorry, I got nothing, man. I got nothing. So if he says something, I guess I'll call you, whatever. Okay, an hour passes, the end of the story. I'm in the kitchen again. Owen walks down with a perfectly drawn picture of a particular scene from Aladdin. Robin Williams, the genie. Remember when he's doing all the genie, the shape-shifting genie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, William F. Buckley. There's one where he says, and accept no substitutions. And he has the genie with a puppet genie on his lap. And Owen hands me that picture. Perfect. I looked down at it. He's like, I can be the genie, not the puppet genie. And I'm like, okay, buddy, I'm good. So that is Owen's adolescent rebellion. That's it, pretty much. And that's the way he speaks, through the stuff that a guy like Don and his team of magicians make.
Don, I want to ask you, I'm so glad you're here because, I would think that it would be just a slam dunk to get all those clips from the Disney movies in this film. What was it? I mean, or was it like a whole week? Okay, good. I'm glad you're here.
We've met about 45 seconds ago, and I know it was no. But I mean, at the end of the day, Ron's book, which is brilliant, really moved Bob Iger, who's the head of the Disney company, like genuinely moved it. And I think that's what greased all the skids to let the clips eventually come to you. And this is a brilliant film, if I can say that in front of you, because it really is. A lot of times it is. No, it is. And I'll tell you why.
Thank you.
Because you forget that it's a film. You are immersed in it, and you are suspended disbelief. And for a long time, I think we'll call these documentary films in the past. I think that this is such a golden age of documentaries, and this film is one of them, that we'll stop calling them documentaries. This is just a great film. So it's a wonderful experience.
Thank you. It means a lot coming from you.
It's
Thank
true.
you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Don Hahn, one of the truly great creative artists, and a buddy and a sidekick to Owen, one of the holy sidekicks. Thanks, Don. Thank you.
You know, I want to ask Roger. I want to ask: were there any boundaries in filming? Were there any places that you couldn't go with Owen? Like you can only film during these certain times, or was it just all bets are off?
You know, the great thing about, knowing Ron and being his friend and Cornelia trusting me is they left me completely alone. I could go to Owen and film anytime I wanted. I didn't even have to tell them. They gave me great freedom. And Ron actually, even though we optioned the book to make the documentary, Ron is an executive producer. He never saw the film until it was done. Cornelia and Walt saw the film at Sundance at the premiere.
First
time with 800 people. They were so emotional, and they had to go on stage and do a Q&A after
Wasn't it
watching
1,200 people? I was at that screening.
Was it?
Yeah, something like that.
1,200. So they really, they really trusted me, and that was important. And it was important that Ron, as a subject, had, stayed away and had distance and let me do my job.
Since Sundance, the movie has screened at other film festivals. What's not just the critical reaction from reviewers and stuff like that, but what has been this reaction you've gotten from people in the audience, like where people came up to you after the film? Were there things that stuck out at you, things that you remember, a reaction, someone who said something after a screening that just went, okay, wow, this movie is making a difference?
Yeah, well, Roger, tell them about. There's so many.
There's so many moments, and Owen's been at a lot of the film festivals, and there's we were at one of them that sticks out is at Full Frame. It was Owen. There's like 1,400 people, and Owen comes. They're on their feet cheering. It's like a rock concert. Owen comes running down the aisle, high-fiving people as he takes the stage. Nice. He takes the stage, and he's like, "I feel the love in this room. It's unbelievable." And then this girl stands up, and she says, "I have autism, and you're my hero because you're speaking for our community, who have not been heard, who people turn and look the other way, and I have to thank you for that." And it was such an emotional moment. I was in tears. I couldn't even speak.
Roger goes silent. Owen gets the mic, and he says, "Yes, but I'm not a hero. You see, we're all really sidekicks searching for our inner hero. At our best, when we help others fulfill their destiny, and on that day, we find the qualities of the hero in our hearts." This time for our family has been like a rolling catharsis of joy and expressions of love. Owen, was silent for years and began to realize soon enough that people were looking at him long enough to look away. He sees everything and remembers everything. And to have him now be in front of crowds of 1,000 people cheering themselves hoarse. It's a kind of expression, I think, of our best selves. I think we're all hopeful when we feel most like ourselves, and Owen summons that and is a vessel in his way for all sorts of left behind people in the wide world. And that's why he says that thing about we're all really sidekicks. He's uncomfortable with the designation hero. And I kind of like that, actually. So.
What was it like for him the first time he saw the movie?
So we came, that was a crazy day. Okay, so we went in the fall of last year. Owen and I went to New York to see it together. And he was a very cool cat. Roger and Julie, they're in a cool Dumbo, it's a cool kind of section of Brooklyn. And we went and got pizza. It's sunny. It's, and I was just bopping around. And I'm like, hey, we got to see the movie. Okay, great. And then we're standing in the lobby, and the elevator's coming down. It's kind of slow. And he's like, when's this elevator getting here? I'm like, ugh. I said, buddy, are you okay? He's like, this is the hero's journey, right? I said, right. Now, as soon as he goes there, we're on very safe ground because it's like he's a little Joseph Campbell. This is his stuff. I said, so what do we know about the hero? He's like, well, unless obstacles are thrown in his path, the qualities of the hero never emerge. I said, right, and all the obstacles are in the movie. Trust me. But how does it end? He says, it ends with me, right? I said, right. And up we go in the elevator. When we get to the motto, to the film company, they realize in an instant, this is their moment. I mean, if Owen doesn't like the movie, all he can speak is the truth. There is no movie. We're not here. We have to close down. And all of a sudden, Roger and Julie are like, oh, Owen, okay, Owen, I hope he likes it. And they waited. It was just me and Owen in the screening room.
Peeking through the door.
And Owen comes out, and what happened?
He hugged me. Owen doesn't hug, and he said, no. I love it. It was an amazing moment.
The best review you could have possibly asked for.
Yeah.
It's
it
from
was.
Owen.
I think that's beautifully said. That's exactly right.
I'd like to open it up to the audience. Before I get questions, I have one quick question. So Owen's brother Walt, older brother Walt, was that a coincidence?
Well, the people at Disney were like, when we first met them, we're like, well, that's an interesting name. Don't hear a lot of Walts these days.
Like Walt? Are you kidding?
Well, so my father's name was Walt. He died when my brother and I were teenagers. So it was like in the prenup. I were going to have the first baby's Walt, it's hard to name a baby Walt, just in case you're wondering. And so I said, no, Walt was a big name in 1927 when my dad was born. And they're like, oh. But we thought later that maybe it was maybe one of the qualities of the bond between Walt and Owen that grew so quickly and deeply that he happened to be named Walt.
That's pretty cool. I love it.
What you really did great, I thought, show us what it was like to be autistic. Yeah. Now, some of the things I noticed, but maybe you could tell me more. The sound, you showed the sound of how it sounds like confusion, for a kid, and you showed that in the soundtrack. And what other else did you do to get into his mind?
So I had an amazing composer who's this 23-year-old kid named Dylan Stark from Portland, Oregon. He is an electronic music composer, and he uses the sounds of VHS machines, fast-forwarding and rewinding. He used Owen's self-talking. He created, and we worked with Skywalker, and Al Nelson, who is our sound designer, did sort of Foley in the woods, in old houses, and creaking staircases, and we created a soundscape that really, because the animated Sidekick story especially is really as much about the sound design as it is about the visuals, to immerse you in this sort of, you're sort of in Owen's world sound-wise. So you're hearing all these sort of, not only the voices in his head, but Owen's voice that is sort of manipulated and to sound like music. So that's what you're hearing is not necessarily instruments. You're hearing Owen's voice mixed with all these different elements. And we spent months creating that we were lucky enough to work with Skywalker. We went there and did the sound mix for 2 weeks with Pete Horner, who's an amazing sound mixer. These are the guys who did Jurassic World, and it was just a joy to do. And it was to me, that was such an important element. It was important not to have dialogue. That was a moment where you were sort of immersed in Owen's head, and you could viscerally experience it and not have a dialogue or anything sort of distracting you from that experience.
I thought one of the most poignant parts of the film was about Walter, his brother.
Yeah.
And I wondered whether the experience of making the film, the experience of the book has affected the relationship with Walt? Has it helped him to deal with the way that he seems to have such inner pain about not being able to help his brother more?
Yeah. Walter is, Owen's the star of the movie, but Walt gives him a hell of a run. He's in a, he really, Owen says, I'm the protector of the sidekicks, but he says Walt was the first protector. And what's so amazing about now watching this unfold, and I write Walt's all over the book, of course, all members of the family are, but Walt's evolution in the book is mapped year by year almost in terms of all the twists and turns. And what's interesting about the book, and certainly the movie, and really what Roger's saying before about people walking and feeling one way and leaving feeling a new way, is that in a way sort of mirrors a 20-year process for our family. Owen changes when the autism whacks him, but what happens over the years is we all change. That's what's happening. And Walt, as much as anyone, certainly, maybe more, because he and Owen are kind of in a mutual sort of a back and forth of shaping each other. And Walt also, when you see one of the reasons the audiences bond so much with Walt, and they do, I mean, when he's at the screenings, it's crazy. And he also has fan clubs outside, frankly. What
was the hashtag at Sundance?
The best thing at Sundance is hot older brother in Life Animated.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He had girls waiting.
There was communities waiting for me. But that's kind of interesting though, and we thought a lot about this. The family has and Roger about what the hold Walt has on the audiences. What's that about? It's because in a way he's kind of one of you, actually. He's a proxy for the audience. We knew this in a way when he's even little. He'd leave the house in the morning in the bus. He'd go out in the world undetected. He's a life and friends. He's, captain of the football team, class president, all that sort of thing. And then he returns at night to Crazy House. And Walt, thereby, is a person with choices as the sibling. We're the mom and dad. We're going to do anything short of murder to help Owen. And that's the way all moms and dads are. But Walt is living a life alongside Owen, and he will make choices that define his life. And what will those choices be in regard to his brother? And that free will and choice is the drama of Walt. And in a way, it mirrors what's going on in the heads of the audience as they look to Walt and see how he's changing and how each of the folks who watch change across 90 minutes. Walt says beautifully in the book, he doesn't say this in the movie, but he says it in action. When he's about 22 years old, he says publicly for the first time, talking about his brother in public, he says, "It's time you knew about the best teacher I ever had." And that's the way Walt feels. And that's, of course, the line that Cornelia and I have stolen many times. So.
Last question.
Make it good. Oh, you're going to ask the last question.
How is Owen today?
Yeah, Owen is just great today. I mean, he's
thriving.
First off, he loves this. I mean, basically, if Owen was here, he'd be running the Q. He runs it himself.
He likes to call on
I'd be out of a job.
You're right.
Yeah, he likes to call
you
on
in the back. Yeah, no, yeah. And how about that? And, it's just, look, standing in front of audiences, cheering themselves and standing and hooting, I mean, it does terrific things for well-being of any human. And it's doing great things for Owen. And what he loves to do, he's being seen for who he is and celebrated for it. And this is giving him even more encouragement. So in front of audiences, he's like, okay, let's do some voices. And he'll just do a whole run of voices. If you go online and type in New York Times, Amy Harmon, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter who interviewed me and Owen together like a couple days ago, you'll see Owen do like a half an hour of voices. His favorites, how he used them, it's wild. And I try to help him, but, I can't keep up with him. He just, he can do hours. And he usually finishes a show with a voice. So should I I'll try one. Okay.
He
So
does them almost as good as Owen.
Owen's better, but I'm trying to bring up my game to meet him. So, okay, here's what he does sometimes. So a movie that Owen really loves is Sword in the Stone, which is what, 1963 or something, and Arthur and Merlin. Right, you know, and it's one that we used a lot because it's kind of a father-son, older, wise sidekick, mentor to young hero, and it's all about lessons of life. And at one point in the movie, if you remember the movie with the squirrels, you know, where there's a squirrel whose heart's broken because she falls in love with young Arthur, who was turned into a squirrel. This is what happens in the movie. I've seen it 812 times. Arthur and Merlin leave the heartbroken squirrels, and Arthur starts to see about some of the mysteries of life, and Merlin stops and feels like he needs to explain, and he says, "This love business is a powerful thing." And Arthur says, "Greater than gravity?" And Merlin says, "Well, yes, my boy, I believe it's the most powerful force on earth." And Owen finishes with that line and says, "And I feel love in every room like this. And it's love that I hope spreads around the world." So thank you all for coming, from Owen and all of us.
You have been watching the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. For further in-depth discussions with filmmakers, be sure to check out the other Q&As available on our channel from past films. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our bonus content. Thanks for watching.